In this episode of the podcast, I just wanted to follow up with an idea we've talked about a couple of times, but it's still here in Chapter 6, and that's the idea of the different types of storage on your devices. We've talked a couple of times about SSDs. Those are solid-state drives. These are way faster than traditional hard drive media. In a traditional hard drive, they're referred to as HDD, hard drive disks. It's like a record, right? So there's a plastic ring inside of an enclosure. This is a way simplified version of how this works. There's a plastic ring inside of an enclosure. There's a needle inside of that enclosure that either writes a 0 or a 1 to, it's called a sector. That's an individual dot, essentially, on that platter. These run very, very slowly. The reason they run slowly is so that they can run for a very long time. Solid-state drives, SSDs, don't have the physical danger of having a needle scrape across a piece of plastic, so they can run much faster because all it is, it's called a gate. It's electricity, 0 or 1 on or off. But these gates run, instead of at the speed of a needle, they run at the speed of electricity, which is many times faster. So here it's chapter 6. It is 225, essentially what we're talking about here, which is hard disk drive versus solid state drive. When in the previous podcast we were talking about what kinds of systems it is that you might buy. One thing I didn't mention, because I wanted to do it in its own section here, was the cheaper system. So if you think about Ultrabooks, if you think about laptops especially, if you think about desktops especially, the cheaper the system, the more likely it's going to come exclusively with an old hard disk drive, which means it's going to run slowly. Now, here in the chapter, this is right here, the soundbite there, I just found it. It's on 226. It's the soundbite that's in my IT lab for installing your own solid-state drive. I will tell you, it is not a scary operation. Oftentimes it just involves, if you're on a PC, oftentimes it just involves a couple of screws and removing the old drive. In a Mac, it involves a lot of screws and a bunch of work. And I am here to tell you that we can do something that will increase your speed. We can do it for very cheap, and we can do it in a way that even the most reluctant user is going to be able to do in a way that I think would be satisfactory. So what I will include here under this podcast is the links I'm talking about right here. And again, just in an effort to try and give you a bunch of websites that you can use that are going to help make your life easier. Deal News is one of them. I would say I have saved lots of money, but I have spent lots more as a result of Deal News. If you are looking for a solid-state drive, don't guess how much you should be spending. Use Deal News at the very least like a benchmark. So if I'm coming in here and I'm shopping for a 240 gigabyte hard drive, right? I need to make another Windows partition for my main Mac here at the office. So this would do just fine. 250 gigs for $29 is an awfully good price. So I might go ahead and click through to that. And you can compare it right down here. There's a 1 terabyte nearly Sony USB-C portable drive right underneath it for $160. You can tell that's a lot more expensive. My suggestion to you is, if you're really apprehensive about opening up your machine to add a new, faster hard drive, you actually don't have to. This link I'm going to include, actually all three of these. This is what I do at my office here, is I just use this rather bootleg-looking $5 cable. And legitimately, it looks terrible. I will admit that is true. And essentially, all you do is you connect the back of this cable to a solid-state drive. So I walk into Walmart. That's right here, this Walmart 240 gigabyte drive. I plug it into this $5 cable. I plug that into my Mac or my PC, and boom, I have external storage like a drive D or E. In the very same way that you might plug in a USB flash drive. But the difference is going to be a USB flash drive is probably just as slow, if not a little slower than your traditional spinning HDD hard drive. A solid state drive, on the other hand, even with this bootleg looking cable hanging out the back of it, is going to be 3 to 5 or 7 times faster than your internal hard drive is. This actually extends the life of many an old laptop or desktop, as long as you're able to look past the kind of ugly of having this big drive hanging off of it. There you go. If you are looking to back up your pictures or movies in a way that's fast and cheap and accessible, but maybe not super pretty, this is the way to do it. It is not an operation. It is literally as easy as plugging in, a cable, and then plugging that cable with a regular USB 3 right into the back or the side of your whatever your device is, and it works like a charm. I can actually do this on my iPad. I can hook up one of these to an iPad and get files. I can hook one of these up to an Android phone and get files. I can hook one of these between, my Macs and my PCs and move stuff. This is a fantastic way to extend your storage. So for $34 between this $5 cable and this $29 hard drive at Walmart, I get 240 gigs worth of expandable storage, and that's a lot cheaper than even a USB thumb drive would be. So this is fantastic. If you're not comfortable with it looking as bootleg as I'm comfortable with it looking, I'm going to include this. It's essentially just an external enclosure for a solid state drive. So that way you put a box around the hard drive. This is legitimately true, it does provide dust safety, so that way you don't have to worry about it getting dusty. And there is a fan in a lot of these solid state drives built in. Maybe you could run into issues there. I've never had an issue, but just in the interest of safety, I'm telling you, you're protecting it from accidental spills. You're protecting it from accidental drops, things of that nature. Or if you just like it neater and tidier than I need it, go for it. And one of the pieces of advice that I'm going to extend to you here, that is actually here from the Gizmodo inventory, and again, Gizmodo, where this particular article comes from, is another really solid and fantastic, tech in the web website that you can use and feel really fairly safe in the research and the opinion type stuff that you're getting from them. But here in this article, and actually here in this article as well, the piece of advice they have for you is, hey, just go to Amazon on any given day where you're like, hey, I could really use a cable again for this, or hey, I might really use another hard drive here. Just go to Amazon and search for the cheapest one the law will allow, and probably that's going to be good enough. I am here to support the snobbiest of users when they're like, well, yes, but I can get, a few extra megabits per second by spending $100 more. And that might well be true. But man, if you can spend less and get 95% of the same kind of speed and storage capacity, spend less. So these links are going to be here under this particular podcast. And adding storage and increasing your speed doesn't have to be scary. It is literally a 50-second job.